Gideon was a man of humble beginnings. He lived in fear. The Midianites oppressed Israel. They stole their crops. They destroyed their land. God saw their suffering. He chose Gideon to deliver them.
The Lord is with you, mighty warrior.
An angel appeared to Gideon. Gideon was unsure. He questioned God's plan.
How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest. I am the least in my family.
But God had a plan. He promised to be with Gideon. He promised victory over the Midianites. Gideon's faith wavered. He asked God for a sign. He laid out a fleece of wool.
If the fleece is wet with dew and everything else is dry, I will know you are with me.
God honored Gideon's request. The next morning the fleece was wet. The ground was dry. Still, Gideon hesitated. He asked for another sign. He wanted the opposite.
Dry fleece, wet ground.
Again, God answered his prayer. The fleece was dry, the ground was covered in dew. Gideon's doubt turned into faith. He was ready to follow God's call. Gideon gathered his army. 32,000 men responded. They came from all corners, ready to fight for their land and their people. The sight of such a large force was both inspiring and intimidating. It seemed like a vast force, a formidable army that could take on any enemy. The soldiers stood in organized ranks, their armor gleaming in the sunlight, their faces set with determination. But God had other plans. He saw beyond the numbers and the might of the army. He wanted to teach a lesson in faith and reliance on divine power rather than human strength. He wanted Gideon to rely on him, not numbers. Gideon, though a mighty warrior, was also a man of faith. He understood that true victory comes from trusting in a higher power. God instructed Gideon to reduce his army. It was a test of faith and obedience. Gideon had to trust that God's plan, though it seemed illogical, was the right one.
Anyone afraid, go home. Gideon proclaimed this to his men, giving them the choice to leave if they were fearful. It was a moment of truth for many.
22,000 men left, fearful of the battle ahead. They walked away, leaving behind their comrades in the fight. Still, God wasn't finished. He had more to teach. He told Gideon to take the remaining men to the water. It was another test, another step in the divine plan. He instructed Gideon to observe how they drank. This simple act would reveal much about their readiness and alertness. Those who lapped the water like dogs, showing alertness, were chosen. Their vigilance and readiness were crucial for the battle ahead. Those who knelt down to drink were sent home. Their lack of alertness made them unsuitable for the task at hand.
Only 300 men remained, a small but elite force, chosen for their faith and readiness, a tiny force against a vast enemy. The odds seemed impossible, but with faith and divine guidance, they were ready to face the challenge.
God's plan was unconventional. It defied all traditional military strategies and common sense. Yet it was a divine strategy, one that required faith and obedience. He instructed Gideon to divide his 300 men into 3 companies. This small force was to be split into even smaller groups, a tactic that seemed risky and counterintuitive. Each man carried a trumpet, an empty jar, and a torch hidden inside the jar. These were not conventional weapons of war, but they were chosen for a specific purpose. They surrounded the Midianite camp at night. The Midianites were many, their numbers overwhelming. The Israelites were vastly outnumbered. They covered the valley like locusts. The sheer size of the Midianite army was intimidating, a sea of tents and soldiers stretching as far as the eye could see.
For the Lord and for Gideon, this was their battle cry, a declaration of their faith and their leader.
Gideon and his men waited for the signal. The tension was palpable, every man ready to act at a moment's notice. At the sound of Gideon's trumpet, they smashed their jars. The sudden noise shattered the silence of the night. The torches blazed brightly in the darkness. The sudden light was blinding, a stark contrast to the pitch-black night. They blew their trumpets and shouted, "For the Lord and for Gideon." Their voices echoed through the valley, amplifying the chaos. They created a spectacle of light and sound. The combination of blazing torches, smashing jars, and blaring trumpets was overwhelming. Confusion and panic swept through the Midianite camp. The Midianites, disoriented and terrified, turned on each other in the chaos, leading to their own downfall. Section 5. Sounds of victory, echoes of fear. The Midianites were terrified. The sudden light, the piercing trumpets, the war cries.
They thought they were surrounded by a vast army. In their panic, they began to attack each other.
The once mighty Midianite army was consumed by chaos. They fled in terror. Gideon and his 300 men pursued them. They chased them down, fueled by God's power. The victory was decisive. The Midianites, once a formidable enemy, were defeated by a small band of faithful warriors. God had delivered his people. Section 6. The power of faith, the triumph of the few. The story of Gideon is a testament to the power of faith. It's a story about courage in the face of overwhelming odds.
Gideon was an ordinary man. He was afraid. He doubted. But God chose him. He equipped him. He gave him victory.
The odds were stacked against Gideon. He had a small army. He faced a vast enemy, but he trusted in God. He followed God's plan, no matter how unconventional it seemed, and God honored his faith. Section 7. Lessons from Gideon's army. Gideon's story offers valuable lessons for us today. We may face giants in our lives, we may feel inadequate, we may doubt our ability to overcome, but God can use anyone. He doesn't look for the strongest or the most capable. He looks for those willing to trust and obey. Gideon's army was reduced to a mere 300. This wasn't about the size of the army, it was about the size of their faith. God wanted to demonstrate his power. He wanted to show that victory comes from him. Section 8. Facing our giants. Today, we all face giants in our lives every single day. They might be fear, doubt, or insecurity that haunts us. They might be illness, loss, or difficult circumstances we can't control. These giants can seem insurmountable and overwhelming. They can make us feel small and insignificant in this vast world. But we serve a God who is bigger than any giant we face. He is the God of the impossible. He can part seas. He can topple walls effortlessly. He can give us victory over our giants, no matter how big they seem to be. Section 9. Finding strength in weakness. God often chooses the weak and the ordinary to accomplish extraordinary things. He doesn't need our strength. He wants our surrender. He wants our trust. When we are weak, he is strong. Gideon's story reminds us that victory doesn't always come with overwhelming force. It comes with unwavering faith. It comes with trusting God's plan, even when it doesn't make sense. It comes with surrendering our fears and doubts to the one who holds the victory. Section 10. A legacy of courage and faith. The story of Gideon is more than just a historical account. It is a narrative that transcends time, offering lessons that are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. Gideon, a man of humble beginnings, was chosen by God to lead his people against overwhelming odds. His journey from doubt to faith is a testament to the transformative power of divine intervention. It's a timeless message of hope and encouragement. Gideon's story teaches us that no matter how insurmountable our challenges may seem, with faith and trust in a higher power, we can overcome them. His life is a beacon of hope, illuminating the path for those who feel lost or powerless. It's a reminder that God is with us in our battles. Just as he was with Gideon, guiding and empowering him, he is with us today. This divine presence is a source of strength and courage, enabling us to face our fears and uncertainties with confidence. He is fighting for us, even when we can't see it. Often we may feel alone in our struggles, but Gideon's story reassures us that we are never truly alone. The unseen hand of God is always at work, orchestrating events in our favor, even when we are unaware of it. Like Gideon, we can face our giants with courage and confidence. His example shows us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. By placing our trust in God, we can confront our greatest challenges with a steadfast heart and an unwavering spirit. We can trust in the God who is bigger than any obstacle. Gideon's faith was not in his own abilities, but in the power of God. This faith enabled him to achieve what seemed impossible. It is a powerful reminder that our own limitations are insignificant in the face of divine power. We can find strength in our weakness. Gideon's story illustrates that our weaknesses can become our strengths when we rely on God. His initial doubts and fears were transformed into unwavering faith and courage, demonstrating that true strength comes from a higher source. And we can emerge victorious not by our own might, but by the power of the one who fights for us. Gideon's victory was not a result of his own strength, but of his faith in God. This victory serves as a powerful testament to the fact that with God on our side, we can overcome any obstacle and achieve true victory.